Hello, each and everyone, and welcome to another edition of Soul Sessions. I'm your host, Lewis King, and I thank you and appreciate you taking time to join me once again. And it is my prayer and my desire from the Lord that this Soul Session will be a blessing to you and it will be enlightening, it will be helpful, it will be informative. And this Soul Session on today, it deals with the subject of you live what you have been taught. You live what you have been taught. And this is centered around the structure of the family. And I want to share this. This is a quote that I want to use because there's a possibility that this particular soul session may have other parts to it. And whichever way it goes, this will be the quote that I will use as a theme. If you want to understand the person of who you are today, look first within your family. If you want to understand the person of who you are today as an individual, look first within your family. Each of us, we are connected to some family, and that family may be your biological family, foster family, adoptive family. You could be a ward of the state. But whatever family you are connected to, each of us, we have received and we have been taught different things in our life, both positive as well as negative, that has been very, very big in shaping everything about our life, our spiritual beliefs and convictions, our personal beliefs, our social beliefs, financial, everything. Family has played a major part in shaping how we view ourselves and how we conduct ourselves as an individual as we go throughout the course of our life. So this is a very important subject right here because sometimes people may not understand why they act a certain way or why they may do certain things. And everything in life, it has a root or a root cause. Everything. Everything has a root cause. And if you want to understand the symptoms of something, then you have to go to the root or the source from which the symptoms came from. And it is the same way um, when it comes to understanding different things about ourselves in relation to the different families that we came up in or the different families that we were nurtured in or we were connected to. We have to go back to the source of understanding our mindset and our behaviors and all of these different things of how we are today by going back to the source. And in each family, this is fact. In each family, there are positive things that we receive as well as there are negative things that we receive. So there's a combination of different things that we receive, from the families that we are connected to. And it is important to be able to um to decipher from those things what we need to hold on to and what we need to just let go and get rid of or discard. So when we look at you live what you have been taught, there are three types of universal learning in the world. Three types of universal learning. The first one is listening learners. Listening learners, they learn by what they hear. They can articulate and comprehend. They understand. You tell them something, they got it. Then you have those that are seeing learners. Seeing. In other words, they learn by what they see. They can observe, watch, and if they can see it done, they're able to do it. They can replicate. I mean, they can carry it out, and they are the type of individual. Hey, all you have to do is just show me one time. I got it. I got it. They comprehend it. Then the last is kind of like a combination, but it is still classified as the third one, which is touch experience learners. Touch experience learners are you learn by the things that you have physically come in contact with or you have already experienced. You already have knowledge of something. In other words, if you were to touch a hot stove and got burnt, then you have learned something from touch, as well as you have gained wisdom from that okay, I do not need to touch a hot stove, because if I do, the repercussions are I will get burnt. So these are the three universal types of learning in the world, and everyone operates under these three principles. Some may learn best from just listening, some learn best from maybe seeing, some learn best from touch experience, and some may be a combination of maybe two or all three. But this is how each and every one of us learn. Now, when we look at the definition of the word taught, taught deals with to teach, to instruct, to tutor, to train, to educate. It is the imparting of information. And, you know, all of this in turn would dictate the lifestyle or the way in which a person lives. It it deals with and dictates how your attitude would be, your habits, your interests, your opinions, your behavior, your patterns, your self-image, your self-concept, how you see yourself, as well as how you see others. So what we are taught, it shapes everything about us, everything. And when we look at you live what you have been taught in relation to the family, this is a very major thing. Now, before we go any further, I want to share this God principle from Proverbs 22:6. Reading from the Jewish Bible, it reads in the Jewish Bible, train a child in the way he should go, and even when old, he will not swerve from it. In another version, the New Century Version Bible, it reads, train children to live the right way, and when they are old, they will not stray from it. And from the King James Version of the Bible, that version in Proverbs 22:6, most of us are probably more familiar with it. It just simply reads, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So I want to share this right here. This deals with early childhood education. The Almighty God has always been the author of early childhood education and the development of what is imputed and what is imparted into a child. Every child that is born, a child is already born ready to learn, even while they are in the womb. And according to statistics, 85% of children, of a child's intellect and their personality and their skills are cultivated and developed already by the age of 5 years old. And that is why it is so important. That's why it is so important within a family structure, as parents, as siblings, as a family unit, that a child is imparted and exposed to positive things versus negative things. It is so important, that a child is exposed and have positive things imparted to them in a family structure, an atmosphere, an environment that is conducive, to produce the things that child will need so that they can be the best that they can be. And many times, if that environment, if that atmosphere, if that family unit is dysfunctional, there would be a lot of major problems. A lot of major problems. And so, as we look at this, living what you've been taught, you can track everything back down to the root cause or the source of how you are, how you treat yourself, how you treat others, if you're in a personal relationship, if you're in a marriage, the people you associate with. If you can track it back to the things that you learned in your childhood, the things that were imparted to you in your childhood. And all of us, according to our different cultures, we have had information that has been imparted to us. This is information that's been passed from generation to generation in each of our families. Information passed from generation to generation. Some of that information, it is good to hold on to. Some of that information, we need to honestly just cut it off and let it go. Because that information may have worked at that time, but it may not work in this time. So all kind of little things, from the way that we talk, our etiquette, our mannerisms, all of these different things, having what is called home training, how we, conduct ourselves, all of these things are learned from family. They're learned from family. And if that family is a dysfunctional family, then that right there is going to create a lot of negative situations in our life. When we look at the definition of dysfunctional family, I want to share this definition. Dysfunctional family, according to Wikipedia, is defined as this: a dysfunctional family is a family in which conflict, misbehavior, and often child neglect or abuse on the part of the individual parents occur continually, regularly, leading other members to accommodate such actions. Children sometimes grow up in such families with the understanding that such an arrangement is normal. That's the thing about dysfunction. Dysfunction, it can cause a person to think that the abnormal is the normal. So many times you may not realize that your abnormal is, that your abnormal is not normal until you start associating and connecting with other people. That may point out different things that is not normal. That is not normal. So it is very important, that we can be able to identify the dysfunction. That we may be carrying, and that is very much alive in our life, from being able to go back to the source and to find out, where did this all start? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? With a lot of the things that we see in today's world, when it comes to family dysfunction and living what we have been taught, I want to talk on this particular subject right here. This is called generational curses. Generational curses. Now, generational curses are not a spell. It's not someone, as we say in the South, it's not somebody trying to work a mojo or a root on you. It's not this stuff that you see in Hollywood. But when you look at generational curses are learned behaviors that have been taught, trained, educated, demonstrated, tutored by broken, dysfunctional parents who learned that mindset from the previous generation or their predecessors as far back as you can trace your family line. And that includes tracing your family line on both sides, because there are things that we get from our paternal father side, and there are things that we get from our maternal mother side. And these generational curses can involve a lot of the things that we see in just everyday life, everyday society. As far as substance abuse, mental, sometimes mental illness, um, all the different forms of abuse, whether it may be verbal abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, um, physical abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction, abandonment. I mean, the list, it just goes on and on. So, generational curses are not a spell that someone put on you and I. Generational curses are the result of living what has been taught. And because of the generational curses, then that has shaped the structure of each of our families. If we came from a family that exemplified dysfunction in many ways, very abnormal things, and if the parents were taught dysfunctional things, and as you trace the line back, and their parents were taught dysfunctional things, and their parents were taught dysfunctional things, I am not saying that it's 100% dysfunctional. I said, but the negative is outweighing the positive. Then this is passed to the next generation. Many of us have come up in situations where sometimes our parents treated us a certain kind of a way. Sometimes that maybe that parent did not know how to love you or to give you the fullness of themselves of what they needed. And many times we can go through our life very bitter, literally hating. We can't stand our parents. We have cut communication. We want nothing to do with them. We do not want to have no kind of contact, no kind of communication, absolutely nothing. They make me sick. I hate my daddy. I hate my mama. I hate my brothers. I hate my sisters. I mean, I hate it. I can't stand none of them. Well, there is a root cause to all of this. There's a root cause. Once again, when we look at you live what you have been taught. Well, when we look at certain ways that maybe our parents taught us this way or taught us that way, then we want to understand this. The way that your parent taught you, you may not have never looked at it this way. Have you ever thought about how did their parent treat them? And then you go back a little further and ask, well, how did my grandparent, my grandparents' parent treat them? And how did my great-great-grandparents treat them? So the further you go back, you can see, this just did not start with your parent. It started way back. And they passed along information because maybe that's all that they knew. One thing is this: you cannot give something that you do not have. And you cannot live something that you have never been taught. We want to keep in mind the universal, the universal rule, the principles for learning. If you was never taught something, you cannot impart it to anyone else because you do not know how to do it. So when we look at the things that are going on within our different family structures, within the history of our family structures, all the negativity, the drama, the chaos, the fussing, the fighting, I mean, the distrust, I mean, the disloyalty, the hate, the dissension, all of these things, these are things that have been exemplified and that have been taught, that have been passed down along the lines. These generational curses where you may have one parent that was an alcoholic, that does not mean that the siblings are going to be alcoholics, and sometime in some cases, one sibling may end up following the same pattern versus another sibling. They can be so turned off by it that they never want to be affected by alcohol and see it, ruin and shape the dictates of their life. So when we look at generational curses have been behaviors that have been educated. Parents I remember growing up, and the way that it was, especially in coming up in a black family, it is not like it is today where you could go to your parents if you did not understand something, and you want to talk to them, and you're trying to get understanding. Back then, coming up, we were pretty, you was pretty much taught within the black family, you know, you better not dare ask the question of an investigative question of, well, I mean, well, Daddy, how come or why? Because that was pretty much almost like um, a mandate for a funeral processional. If you decided that you're going to question maybe Daddy or Mama, because we were taught, back then there were a lot of things that happened. You do not question, you do not ask, you stay in a child's place. So there were many things that happened where you had to carry a lot of stuff. You were not allowed a platform to talk about it. You were not allowed to get the answer so you can understand why you feel a certain way. There are many things, I mean, that have happened, um, talking about generational curses, that have been demonstrated by parents, that were demonstrated by their parents, that were demonstrated by their parents. I mean, things that have gone on within the family as far as incest, um, that was normalized. Things that have gone on within the family as far, I mean, as far as abuse, that was normalized. Things that have gone on within the family where I mean, you're talked to any kind of a way, you are verbally abused. I mean, everything about you, you are tore down. Your self-image, your, your self-esteem, verbally, mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually, you are broken down. There are many things for the generational curses where we have seen things for its drugs. We have seen things where there's been a rotation of men and women in and out of the house. There are many things that we have seen. I mean, from the family just constantly fighting and just carrying on. There's always constant drama. There are things that we have seen. I mean, where I mean it looks almost like a war zone. The police constantly staying at the house. Someone getting hurt. Someone pretty much being held hostage. Someone pretty much, uh, you know, being told so many different things, wherein you and I, may not have been allowed to live the fullness of who we were. So what does all of this culminate to? All of this culminates to many of those experiences from childhood have been carried into our teenage years and 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and so on, have been carried into the the transitions of our life. And as they have been carried, these things not being addressed have caused some major problems because they have ended up manifesting in many different ways. The relationships that was taught and that was built within our own self, if it was positive, if it was negative, when we connect with other people, what we have been taught, it comes out. Whatever we was educated within the structure of our family units, it is going to come out. You cannot hide this. This is not something that you can sweep under the rug or sweep under, or hide under a rock. There are things that you and I, that we have experienced, that have to be addressed. And when those things are not addressed, then those things come out. A prime example is this, and this is a section that deals with sometimes in excuse me, in family relationships. Sometimes the mother and the father, they may go their separate ways. Many times, even in marriages, divorces, separations, children are the innocent victims, and children get caught in the middle of the battle. So this section here deals with children being used as pawns. Children being used as pawns. And what this is talking about is you have a situation where, you know, you have one dysfunctional parent, or, dysfunctional parents' behavior. What they would do, they will use their manipulation of the child that you and the other parent that you all share. You would use that to achieve, or, the outcome of satisfying certain interests that you may have. In other words, what I'm talking about is one parent can try to use verbal manipulation as a means of spreading gossip about the other parent. Communicating with that parent through the child, and the process of exposing the child to the risk of the other parent's, displeasure or anger or frustration or irritation, from that communication, rather than the parent talking directly with the other parent. They will do things to throw the other parent under the bus. They will they will use the child as a go-between or a mediator to carry messages, or to say little things. Well, mom, well, mama, daddy said this, told me to tell you this. Now, children are innocent, but sometimes because of the anger that parents have with one another, and because of their displeasure with one another, and because the adult relationship did not work, it fell apart. A lot of these personal feelings, a lot of this hurt, the child gets caught in the middle. The parents use the child or the children to go between each other, saying things and slandering each other, and um, trying to destroy each other's reputation and character, and then using that information. Sometimes they may use it maybe in the public. They may use it on social media. They, and many times in this day and time, people are very big on um, wanting to put their business out on social media. So they use the platform of Facebook, and they use the platform, of other social sites to say things maybe about the other parent, and to try to make them look bad, and try to destroy that parent and the other parent in every possible way that they can. They will literally try to destroy them. They do not want, because of whatever happened, you hurt me, and because of that, maybe the other parents, they never addressed certain things that happened to them before they ever got involved with the maternal or the paternal uh, mother or father of their child. Then these things come out, and that dysfunction, it continues to be imparted from that parent. Now it's being imparted to the child, and so the child is receiving this information. They're being educated. They're being tutored. They are being taught. They're being trained how to continue a cycle of dysfunction as they grow and as they interact, and if they become parents, not unless the cycle or the chain is broken. So generational curses are very dangerous, because they are, this is information that is taught from parents and passed along the lines. And, there is so much anger. This is another thing with generational curses that has been passed from generation to generation, that we have so many people that are angry. And they may not understand the magnitude and the level of their anger. They may not understand it. And they may wonder where, sometimes, what's wrong with me? And they just really go off the deep end, and um, they can never really, get their relationships off the ground. Their relationships can never cultivate and move in a positive direction if the other person says something. They just explode. Well, where did this come from? Many times, if you want to understand the person of who you are today, once again, look first within your family. Go to the source, go to the root. Because if you do not go to the root, then you will not understand where the symptoms are coming from. It is no different from if you get a cut on your finger and you are looking at the blood running from your finger. Well, the blood is just the symptom. The blood is just a symptom until you go to the root or the source from which the blood is coming from and what caused the blood and begin to address it, identify it, wherein you can do something to apply direct pressure. Then the blood is going to keep flowing. And especially if you are a free bleeder, you could literally hemorrhage to death. Well, that's the same way it is with, I'm just using that illustration or that example with generational curses. There are so many things that have been taught and exemplified and demonstrated and tutored and educated and imparted from dysfunctional parents that literally the parents have been hemorrhaging and bleeding for years. Now the children, they are sitting in the classroom of dysfunction, and then they're going to carry this stuff, and then they possibly could end up being free bleeders, and things begin to hemorrhage in their life, and you see things where they cannot hold down a job. Why? Because of their dysfunction. They cannot, maintain a healthy relationship. Why? Once again, because of their dysfunction. I mean, their financial life is in chaos once again because of their dysfunction. There are many things that we have learned from generational curses, taught generational curses that is literally destroying our life today and have our lives in chaos. So it's very important, that we can identify the root causes of what is causing all of this dysfunction. So, this is something right here I want to touch bases on. Another thing about generational curses that is taught is this is just this section is titled um, dysfunctional styles. Dysfunctional styles. And dysfunctional styles are very dangerous because whoever the parents are, the child will always be the victim of the dysfunctional parent. You have some parents that are very narcissistic, wherein they rule by fear. And I remember, especially especially coming up in the black family with black mothers and black fathers, and and I cannot really speak for other cultures. I said because my culture is black. So, but when we look at sometimes being narcissistic, there were things that were said to us. We were taught old school as far as respect your elders, respect your elders, and disrespecting your elders or talking crazy or something. Um, Many of us may have heard this particular saying said to them: "I brought you into this world, and I take you out." So, but there are situations where this being narcissistic goes beyond respecting your elders. This is literally every bit of fear. Where I'm talking about fear to the extent that the parent would actually kill the child. It's one thing to discipline, but it's another thing to abuse. There is a broad gap between discipline because of love versus just outright abuse. So the list of dysfunctional styles, it deals with narcissistic behaviors. It deals with Parents that abusing through, physical violence, emotional, sexual, mental, whatever. You have situations for this, dysfunctional styles that deal with. You have some parents that, that are perfectionists. They are fixated, on order to the extent, if you have one thing out of order, they're going to hurt you. Now, order is good. It's nothing wrong with having order. It's nothing wrong with wanting to have things, looking neat, having a good appearance. I said, but there's a difference. When a person is such a perfectionist that it triggers a place of anger. It triggers a place of anger. And sometimes all of us have a little bit of being a perfectionist in us, but it is another thing when it is on the level of it is so OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, to the point that it literally have you angry, where you want to hurt someone because something is out of place. Many times this is taught within family structures. It can be taught within a family structure. So that's another thing dealing with dysfunctional styles. Another thing is being dogmatic or occult mindset. In other words, children. They are not allowed within reason to question authority. You do not question the value system, just like what I was talking about. What I say go, and do not get me wrong. I am not advocating that a child disrespect their parent and talk back. What I am talking about is things should be open where if your child does not understand something, they should be able to come to the mother or the father and be able to ask, Daddy, I do not understand this, or or a mom, or mama, or mommy, I do not understand this. Can you help me? But with the way that some parents have been brought up, you do not ask them nothing. You do not ask them absolutely nothing. No questions. Another thing deals with inequitable parenting. In other words, you have some parents that go to the extreme for one child while they ignore the needs of another child. In other words, sad to say, it shows partiality or favoritism, and I would use that word. Sometimes parents can do some very dangerous things where when they play favorites among their children, because that causes a lot of animosity between siblings. All children, you have to love them equally. But each of your children, you work with different according to how they are wired. But the love has to be a mutual, equal love. And once again, when you go back to the root source, depending on how that parent came up, then some children may get more favor than the other child. Another thing dealing with dysfunctional style, it deals with deprivation. In other words, deprivation just simply control, neglect, by withholding love, support, necessities. Deprivation, withholding sympathy or empathy, withholding, praise. Just giving praise, encouraging words. To your child, attention, encouragement, supervision, as well as putting your child at risk. So these are other dysfunctional styles where some of us, and this could be you, where you were the victim, the child of, you experienced deprivation, on the regular. This was taught, this was educated, this was tutored, this was imparted. Where you dealt with neglect. You dealt with not, being loved or hugged or touched. You dealt with not being supported. There may have been things that you did in school. Things that you may have done maybe in your career, maybe a major event, just something you just simply just needed or wanted or desired your parents, their presence. They may not have been able to attend everything, But not to come to absolutely nothing, that's deprivation. And they were able to come to things. No one is that busy in the world where you cannot make time with your presence when it comes come to your child. No, you may not make everything, but it is so important that our presence is made known because we are imparting. It's all about impartation. We are imparting. And if we are imparting the negative over the positive, that is going to carry with the child into the adult years of their life. Another thing is negative dysfunctional, styles deal with the abuse among siblings, where parents they do not intervene, where if it is physical altercations, things that go on, siblings are fighting, or even sexually, because there are things that go on many times in families that we do not want made known. There are things that are allowed in families many times that people do not want known that is going on. There are many things that go on behind closed doors, wherein on the outside this can look like the perfect family, but behind, underneath the surface, there are some dangerous dysfunctions that will blow each of our mind and each of our families. So another thing for as dysfunctional styles wherein there are abandonment issues where parents will willfully separate from their children. They do not wish to be contacted. Do not contact me anymore. I do not want anything to do with you. Sometimes they will relocate. Do not even tell their children where they are. They totally disappear. Sometimes you have situations where sometimes a parent may reach a breaking point. They may just up, leave, and never come back, and just totally abandon the child. That today could be you and I. Well, we experience that from a dysfunctional style of maybe one of our parents, as well as things to deal with appeasements. Appeasements. And appeasements, and this right here, this is when parents, they reward bad behavior according to their standards. And I give you a prime example. I remember growing up, and many of us remember this, especially, if you are of black culture. We was taught this where, we could have been rewarded for bad behavior. And that is, if somebody put their hands on you, you better fight them. You better fight them. If you get in a fight, you better not lose. You better not lose. And so many times, if a child found himself in a situation where instead of sometimes just walking away to live another day, then that child can find himself getting into a situation, an altercation, a fight, or whatever. And because they have been taught by their parent that if you lose this fight, then I'm going to beat you, then they carry this stuff. They carry this stuff. This in turn, this can affect the child's behavior. It can affect their temper. It can cause them to have tantrums, all kind of different things. So there are a lot of things when you're dealing with appeasements where children set these expectations upon a child, and children being young and impressionable, your parent tell you this, well, guess what? You're going to believe it because you do not want to get beat. And if you do not do what they want and appease them, then you know that punishment is coming. That has happened to many of us. Many of us. So as well as you have situations with that, you have situations dealing with parents that act they want to micromanage every single area of their child's life, even when their child has become an adult. This is dysfunctional. This is part of a dysfunctional style. You have some parents, where they do not know how to just simply respect even their adult child for the adult that they are. They still want to keep them in this place of, yes, this is your baby, this is your child, but this is your adult child. And they cannot differentiate respecting them on an adult level, and that they are at a place where they can make their own decisions and choices, and that they have their own free will to do as they desire. Also, you have dysfunctional styles where some of us and some individuals, you were not allowed no friends, no friends. You were not allowed to engage in making friends. You were not allowed to have friends of the opposite sex. You were not allowed to have friends over to the house. Then you have situations, where dealing with role reversals, where some parents, they expected even their minor children to take care of them instead of them taking care of their children. In other words, they wanted the children to cater to their every need, to their every need. So these are some of the different things that we are looking at when it comes to dysfunctional styles. Dysfunctional styles, have caused a major, major issue in the structure of who you are. And and because these things may not have been identified maybe in your life or my life or our lives, then we are seeing the results of this in our lives today. So when we look at you live what you have been taught, these are just some of the things starting out that I want to talk about. It is very important in understanding with the things that have been passed from generation to generation, from family to family, how messed up we can be. It is important to allow forgiveness to take place. It is important to allow forgiveness to take place in forgiving if you are at that place. And I am not saying that every person is at a place where they can forgive their parents for the things that they did to you and I as an individual. But forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools to set yourself free. See, the whole purpose of forgiveness is to loose you and to set you free. Forgiveness, it unwraps the grave clothes off of you so that you can move forward. And there are many things that have happened. Some of us, our situation is better than others. Some of our situations are worse than others. Some of our situations, with the things that we have experienced in family as living what you've been taught, has caused us to become prisoners of war, captives, incarcerated within our mind, our emotions, our our behaviors, and so many different ways that we live our life. And so a very powerful tool is for the things that your parent did, for the things that they did not do. Just stop and think about this. Just think about this once again. How did my grandparents treat my parents? How did my grandparents treat my daddy? How did my grandparents treat my mama? That is a question that you can ask yourself. And if they taught them the way that my parents are teaching me, and if they abused if my grandparents one of them or both of them abused my parent the way that I have been abused, if they talked to them crazy the way that they have talked to me, if they neglected them the way that they neglect me, if they abused me in every way the way that my parent abused me, if they walked out on my parent the way that my parent has walked out on me, if they did not make their presence known in my parent's life the way my parent has made it in my life, you know, if they tried to micromanage and control every facet of my parents' life the way that they try to do it in mine, then God, I need your help to help me forgive my parent, because they have been the victim of living what they was taught, and in turn they have passed it on to me. But now through you that I can identify, they did what they were taught, what they were taught, because that is all that they knew. Maybe they didn't, maybe they was never taught how to love. Maybe they was never taught to say I love you, or maybe they was never taught to be physical and affectionate. Just giving a hug, and just letting us know that it's going to be okay, that I love you. Maybe they were never taught to say, hey, I'm proud of you. I want you to know I appreciate you. I mean, that was really great what you did. Or if you may have made a mistake or maybe you didn't win something, say, hey, look, it's okay. It's okay. This does not mean that you're not a winner, because you are a winner. We just keep working at it. You know I got your back. I'm here to support you. Maybe they were never taught that. So when you look at your parents, you and I, sometimes the years of the ill feelings, the bitterness, the hate, the malice that we feel in our heart, have you traced back to the root, to the source of how they were taught, and that the fact of they are simply living what they was taught, and they could not give to you what was never given to them? It does not mean that they cannot change. But for right now, maybe that is all that they knew. Ask yourself this question. Maybe you want to go to the mirror. Maybe you want to, just ask yourself just a real relevant question. Can I forgive them? Can I forgive my parent? Or is it past a point or past a place, possibly now that I understand they were the student of what they were taught, and they could not move beyond what they was taught? As you think on this, until the next soul session, I want to encourage you to allow this to just marinate in your thoughts, to just run through your mind as you go throughout the rest of your day, the rest of your week. And open up your heart, open up your spirit, open up your mind to the possibility of each of us within my family, my siblings, my brothers, my sisters, my parents, everyone in my family line. They have been students as well as they have been victims of living what they were taught. Until next time, this is Louis King. I thank you for joining me for Soul Sessions on today. May you have an incredible, awesome, blessed day, and I will talk with you next time. Take care.